Hello, hello. We are live. I'm so excited today to have Shannah Compton Game of Millennial Money joining us today. She is this chief financial money strategist for millennials. She has amazing advice. I know for sure because I apply most of her advice to my own life. She has a really amazing podcast, which was featured in the new and noteworthy of Apple iTunes. It's titled Millennial Money. You can find her on social media on just about any platform at Millennial Money. So without further ado, let's welcome Shannah to the career strategy session.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it is. So as we get started, guys, I just want to remind you that you can ask questions today using the Q&A feature here on Google Hangout. You can also ask your questions via Twitter if you tweet us. Shannah is at Millennial Money, and I am at JV Twilly. And as always, if you have any questions, if you're watching the replay, you can email her directly. She has some amazing advice for you. She actually answers a lot of her questions on the podcast. So if there are some questions that you have been pondering about, check out her podcast because she will most likely cover any of your concerns. And before we get into the Q&A today, I just want to let you all know that tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be on a Twitter chat. It's going to be your Millennial Money career Twitter chat. So I'm super excited to participate in that with Shannah. So enough of me talking. Beyond the introduction that I gave, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I often call myself a born entrepreneur. I think I came out of the womb thinking of strategy and marketing and all sorts of crazy things. And just like any entrepreneur would tell you, it's been quite an interesting, wild ride. I started my first business while I was in college, actually, at 19. And it was the first national student film festival. And we raised about $250,000 a year, just myself and two other people, college students. We knew nothing about what we were doing. Over 130 kids got jobs and internships in the entertainment industry. And it was just such a cool experience because I had no fear. And, it was before the internet, so it would have been a lot easier had we had the internet, but, or social media, I should say. The internet was there, but it was not at all like it is now. So from that experience, I learned a whole lot of things that I think have really helped me in my career. One, obviously, is negotiation, which I know you are, a huge proponent of. And I think, especially for women, we cannot learn this technique enough. And so I just basically negotiate everything from, big things, career things and contracts, all the way down to negotiating when I go, stay at a hotel or something like that. And other than negotiating, I definitely learned persistence. And I think whether you work for yourself or you work in a company, that is a great quality to have, not to be a pain in the butt about it, but to, really kind of passionately go after what you love. And also how to be really resourceful. And I think, in today's world, as career women, that is definitely something we have to learn how to do because we're balancing so many different things. So, with all of those things put together, and obviously I had, a love of entrepreneurship, of marketing, of all those sorts of things. But I also had a real kind of business, and obviously I had to manage budgets and lots of things like that. So after I got my MBA, I started to think about, well, how can I kind of put all these pieces together? And I got a certified financial planner designation, which is kind of like passing the bar for attorneys. It's kind of the highest echelon. And I still don't quite know how I passed it because it was the most, I think, rigorous thing I've ever done in my life, but so rewarding. And so then I just started to see that, millennials in particular lack financial strategy, lack financial education, lack direction. And a lot of the people out there that are talking to the younger demographic, they're talking about topics that I think are just they're almost too easy. I mean, we want to learn about how can we, no matter what income level we're at, achieve the goals we want to achieve and have the lifestyle we want to achieve. And I think it's totally possible that you can do those things. You just need to know some things about your finances and tweak and change some things, but you can get there. So I really just kind of started on this mission to use my financial planning background and my MBA background to create a company that goes after the millennial demographic, that provides all this advice, that does private financial consulting with them. I'm also working on launching some courses. I teach in a university, and then also, interesting enough, different companies are seeking me because now I have all of this background information on millennials and on money, and what kind of topics you guys love to hear about and what really resonates with you. So for the longest time, I've kind of felt like I don't fit in one particular box, and so it's been really cool and yet honestly difficult to kind of forge this different kind of uncharted path for myself. So I have quite an interesting kind of career history and lessons learned, I would say.
Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and everything amazing that you're working on. As we can see, you have always been an entrepreneur, which is something that I think a lot of millennials can resonate with. So as you talked about the different things that you've done thus far in your career, it brings me to my next question. What does navigating the career jungle mean to you?
It has been a career jungle for me since age 19, and it has not stopped. And I don't anticipate it will stop. But I think for me, it's just really learning about what your gift is, what you are basically called to do on this earth. I'm really passionate about that. And I think each of one of us, no matter, if we're, the receptionist or we're the CEO of a company, we all have this calling and these gifts. And I think it's being able to recognize what those are and then being able to find your place in the career world and, fight for it. And it's not easy, no matter what career you have. But, I think that, sometimes I know that myself and a lot of my entrepreneur friends think, oh my gosh, like only if this could be easy, only if we could, just want this job and that's all we do our whole entire life. But personally speaking, that's just not how I'm made. So for me, navigating the career jungle is about really honing my skills, learning my place, and then finding my place, in this massive career jungle.
I love that, because we all have to find our own place and create our own place in many cases, such as you have. You've just been out there killing it since 19 years old. So tell me, what did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Well, when I was very, very little, I was quite persistent that I was going to be an actress and nobody was going to tell me anything different. And then I realized when we moved to LA, I realized oh my gosh, you have to be stick thin and this and that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So then I changed to I want to be a film producer. I want to be the person in charge. So I was always, no matter what I said I wanted to be, I needed to be the person in charge, which now I find hilarious, but yeah, so those were kind of my early career aspirations, which if I now look at my own career, I am actually a producer and I do actually quote unquote act in a certain way. So I've used some of those thread lines have come through in my own career.
Awesome. So was your first job at 19 starting the film festival, or did you have a job as a teenager?
I mean, as a teenager, I pretty much just, babysat like most kids did and things like that. But at 19 was really, kind of my first, I don't even call it a job. It was more like a career. So that was kind of my first real entree into many different facets of the career world.
Awesome. So let's take that a little bit further. What qualities do you think have made you successful?
Well, a lot of, what I've talked about, I think it's being ruthless, and having a positive attitude. So, there's lots of things if you're an entrepreneur that are going to try and knock you sideways and upside down and backwards forwards. And, you take 10 steps forward and then, 20 steps back, and it's really hard, and you have to be really strong mentally, and you have to also really know what you're striving for. And if you forget that along the way, you're going to get burnt out and tired. And then also for me, it's this may sound silly, but like being nice to people. So when I was starting out in my career, there were a lot of people that could have helped me who just turned their back and decided not to help me. And I always thought, well, if I'm ever in that position, especially being a female, I'm going to try and help whoever I can, because I just think that's like the right thing to do. And then also just being nice to people. My husband always laughs at me because I live in Los Angeles and there's traffic everywhere and you could get mad at people all day long. And that's just not my kind of MO. So being nice to people, but then also as a woman, you've got to be a little tough. Like, you've got to know how to negotiate. You've got to know how to be persistent. And, you've got to have a backbone. I mean, that's just, I, as a financial planner, work in a world full of men and full of older men, and I get called honey and sweetie. And, I know a lot of times what they're thinking when they look at me, but the difference is I know inside that I'm smart. I know that I'm capable, and I know, what I can do. So, I'm not, an easy pushover. And then I think, being an entrepreneur, like one of the most important things is having balance. So I could work 24/7, 7 days a week, all year long. My brain's always working, but I have to learn that if I don't take time to shut off and get away from work, then I'm really no good to anybody. So that's something that it's always a work in progress because it's never exactly easy. Yeah, but I would say it's kind of all of those things, kind of mushed together.
And one of the things that really resonated with me as you told that story is you have this amazing confidence where people may see you externally as a woman and they call you sweetie and doll and these other feminine terms, which are fine for some people, but you never let that get to you. You have that confidence, like, I know who I am and I know what I bring to the table, and I absolutely love that. So as you just mentioned, you work in a male-dominated industry. How did you get started in the financial industry, going from film and then really specializing and getting these high advanced certifications to be able to give us this amazing financial knowledge?
Yeah, it's a really interesting path. So after I ran the film festival, a very prominent film producer by the name of Jerry Bruckheimer, you may know him, he's produced a lot of the blockbusters. He decided to sponsor my festival for a few years, and he was starting a company called Z.com, and he asked me to come on board as one of the executives and create kind of their collegiate programming, which was an awesome experience because, again, it was myself and 10, 50 plus, guys. And, at that time I was 21 and thinking, okay, I'm not going to let them know this, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So I went to that and kind of ran that with my festival for a few years. And then when the .com market kind of blew up, everything kind of blew up together. And at that time I was thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Because I gave away all these amazing jobs to people in the festival. And I know I had all these skills, I just had no idea what to do. So I started to do marketing consulting, which was easy for me. And that's when I got my MBA. And then actually at that time, my father has been in financial services his whole life and ran a very, very small company and said, hey, would you want to come, work with me and learn from me and, see if this is something you like? And I thought, well, all right, why not? I'll give it a shot. So that's kind of how I got pointed in that direction. And then obviously, getting the advanced degrees has really helped, get my foot in doors places and, I think really refine my career. But yeah, it's been a very interesting path. It's not been if I went back to 19 years old, I would say, no, I'm not going to be here. Are you kidding me? So it's been very interesting.
It is very interesting and fascinating. So where do you find the courage and the inspiration to accept these challenges with such gusto? And you don't just accept a challenge, you dominate when you take on something new.
Well, I would say that it's obviously, self-confidence in myself, but more than that, I'm a huge faith believer. I'm a Christian, and over the years, I've had a few bumps along the road, and really, if it had not been for my faith, I don't think that I probably wouldn't still be standing. So for me, that's where I always look for strength and inspiration, and it helps me in really tough situations. But I think also I was built with this, which I've shied away from for a lot of years, but I was built with this ability to handle intense situations, to be put on the spot, to think on my feet really well, to thrive in situations that I need to in the career that I'm in. And I think I was built with those gifts, but definitely, shied away from them and was fearful. And it's really my faith that has allowed me to recognize that no, this is built into me, and I can stand strong, in this place, or whatever activity it is that I'm doing. And all of us have these little voices inside our head that tell us, oh, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that. And, so I think over the years, I've just gotten really good at going, okay, I have no idea how to do this, but I know that I'm supposed to be doing it. So I'm just going to go for it. And that's really what happened with the podcast. I had a student at the university that I teach financial literacy at, and she's a really smart student, and obviously a very young millennial. And I said to her, like, hey, would you want to help me with, some videos or a podcast or something like that? And she's like, oh, yeah, you got to do a podcast because that's what we're all listening to. So I was like, all right, well, I'll figure this out somehow. So literally in 2 weeks in February, we launched the podcast, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about format. I really had no idea about anything. I just kind of jumped into the water. And then when it got featured on iTunes, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I obviously was supposed to do that. And I still have no idea what I'm doing. But so it's just having confidence to just go for those things that those little voices are telling me.
Yeah, and I love that, and I'm so glad that you mentioned your faith, and that's something that I share with my community as well. Having that strong faith base and going back to the things that lift you up and help you get through those hard times. Sometimes we can't do it on our own. So I'm very excited that you mentioned that as well. So let's shift gears for a little bit. Tell me, do you read a lot? And if so, what's the last book that you read?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I do read a lot. I would say now, though, I listen to a lot of podcasts, honestly. But I do read, but I tend to read really only like business or Christian books. That's just, for some reason, I love that. And I love like true stories. So the last book I read was a book called Uprising, which was by a guy who I actually really love. His name's Erwin McManus, and he actually runs a church out here in Los Angeles called Mosaic. It's really cool, funky church where it's obviously any church is everybody's welcome, but there's just a young vibe and kind of a new resurgence of what it means to be a Christian. But anyway, he calls himself a futurist. And he was first a business guy and a novelist and all sorts of things. And he wrote this great book called Uprising. And I've read it like 3 or 4 times, and I don't read books 3 or 4 times, but it's just that good. And it really kind of inspires me to hone my creative skills and hone, how I want to be just as a person in general. And so that's one of probably my most favorite books. But I have to admit that I'm one of those people that often starts books, and then another book will come my way. I'm like, oh, so I'll start that book. So I probably have like 4 or 5, half read or unfinished books, but I'll come back to them eventually.
I find myself sometimes in between 3 or 4 books. But you mentioned that you're really into podcasts. So which podcasts do you listen to? I'm always fascinated to hear what the hosts of podcasts listen to.
That's interesting. Let me just open up my podcast app so that I can make sure that honestly, I don't listen to my podcast, which most people are like, you don't listen to your own podcast? No, I record it and then I send it out for the world to hear. Let's see. Oh, one of my most favorite, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to get this podcast. It's called the Startup Podcast. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Yes, but it is
yes, an awesome podcast. That is one of my favorites. And then I listen to Smart Passive Income just because I love to hear Pat Flynn's tips and advice, and he's kind of talk about someone navigating the career jungle, in a really awesome way. And then other than that, I listen to the church that I go to has a podcast called Mosaic. And I listen to Planet Money by NPR. So lots of money ones, of course, but I like to hear what everyone else is doing. But Startup Podcast is probably my most favorite. I mean, I'm like addicted to that podcast. And I listen to the episodes like over and over and over again.
Yeah, those are so addictive. And guess what, guys? We actually listen to a lot of the same podcasts. I don't listen to Mosaic, but I'm definitely going to download it. And
yes.
To my rotation, but I listen to Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn, the Startup Radio, Planet Money. So we share a lot of the similar interests when it comes to podcasts. Very cool. And of course, I listen to your podcast. It's at the top of my list of the way it's categorized. So for those of you who haven't, make sure you download Millennial Money in iTunes or Stitcher Radio so that you can check out her amazing financial tips for millennials. So I know this wasn't planned, but I'm just going to let you know why I love her podcast so much. There are some money experts out there who will tell you, you can't go on vacation. You can only do this. One of the amazing things about the Millennial Money podcast is it tells you how to be smart. You can still travel. You can use points on your card. She talks about different ways that you can live your life and be smart with your money and maximize the money that you have. And that's one of the things that really connected me to her podcast from the very first time that I listened to it. So thank you for giving us that unique perspective that we don't have to go without in order to be financially savvy.
Awesome. Yeah. And I love to hear, what people get out of the podcast, because I think there's so many different people that listen that have, emailed me questions that are like different economic levels. And it's really funny because they all kind of say the same thing, which is a lot of what you're saying. So, I mean, that was always my mission. That's kind of my mission with everything is, no matter what income level you're at, you can still live the life that you want to live. You may have to make alterations and, there may be a few sacrifices along the way, but we all owe it to ourselves to be smart financially, and especially as women, because we live so much longer than men. We come in and out of the career field throughout our lives, and we just have things that can happen to us that, we've got to be prepared for. I know a lot of women who, get divorced and they have no idea about what's going on financially. And then they're in this, terrible situation that they're trying to climb out of. So as women, like, it's really important that we get our finances down and we're really smart about it. And also that, what I try to bring to everyone is just positivity. Like, who cares whatever mistakes you made? I've made plenty of mistakes myself, trust me, and I'm an expert. So, it's just throwing away your money mistakes and just moving forward. And I think, that's what I just try to really inspire people that, I know money has fear and stress and all sorts of things kind of wrapped around it. But if we pull the emotion out of it and just come up with a good plan, we can get where we need to go.
That's amazing. So speaking of challenges and difficult times, bring us to that point where you may have had a really challenging career experience. How did you get through that moment?
Wow. A lot of the things that I've already talked about, I really don't know any other way in my career than, and I call it kind of like on my hands and knees, like digging through muck. I've done that a lot in my career, and that's just kind of how I know how to handle things. So when they get really tough is when I've got to get really resourceful. I've got to kind of pull out everything in me to open a new door or open a new channel. And when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're trying to do what I do and what you do, giving up isn't an option. And so I think when you come to those forks in the road, that's really when you have to turn it on even more, and really figure out different avenues that, I'm constantly knocking on doors. I'm constantly asking questions, and a lot of people are scared to ask questions. And I think that is kind of your biggest asset, is the ability to just ask someone, hey, can you help me? Or, hey, who do you know who could help me do this? And the worst thing they're going to say is no. But I've had more than enough times where I've asked those kind of tough questions when I'm at those crossroads in my career, and somebody has opened a door for me that if I had not asked that question, it would have never happened.
Yeah, that's so important. To the whole navigating the career jungle community, don't be afraid to ask questions. It's not a sign of weakness. And a lot of people think, no, I should be able to do this on my own and figure it out. But why? When you can connect with mentors, people who have been there and done that, and you can avoid some of the mistakes that they have made. They've seen different things, so they can guide you along the way. So don't be afraid to ask. So close to the end of the questions, this 30 minutes has just zoomed by, as it always does. You have worked in many male-dominated industries. So what advice do you have to a millennial woman who works in a male-dominant industry? How can she be successful and carve out her own path in the career jungle?
I think you got to always remember you're a woman. So I know a lot of women who are like, oh, I'll just be tough and I'll just be, have this edge to me. No, 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 no. You still need to be a woman. You still need to be feminine. You still need to be able to work some of those assets. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. But then I think you've got to also find some sort of confidence in you that you can stand in the room full of men, and you can know just as much as they know. You can be just as smart as they can, and you can contribute just as much. And you've got to not let the gender role inhibit you from, speaking up, from contributing, from, being who you are, called to be. And so I think it's really just, if you can figure out a way to, if you're in a male field, to walk into whatever room or whatever conference or whatever meeting and look at everyone there like they're just like you. That's what I try to do, is not see a room full of men, they're just like me. But I will tell you that, a room full of men, if you're a millennial and you're, career woman, it's not a bad place to be either. Because oftentimes the men get tired of talking to themselves and they want to talk to you. They want to talk to somebody different. And so that's when really you can use your female status to your advantage, I think. And then, once you open your mouth up and you show them how smart you are and how capable you are, you can really steal the show. So it's not a bad place to be.
That is spot on. Awesome career advice for millennial women. So as we wrap up, I would like to give you the opportunity to tell us what you're working on and how we can connect with you online.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I am actually sort of spurred on by my Millennial Money community, starting a whole host of free webinars, and I'm launching a few budget mastery courses that I'm creating online. That's kind of been a big topic with millennials, and I really want to teach people how to master your budget and carve out savings, and I have proven formulas of how to do this. So please feel free to go to my website, yourmillennialmoney.com. You can sign up online there for access to the webinars. And then I will, keep you in the loop of, when the courses are going to launch. So lots of exciting things. I'm also working on an really exciting venture, which I'm so thrilled about, that is actually going to be a Millennial Money product for the Christian market, for Christian millennials. And it's going to be distributed nationwide. So I am so excited. I've got an amazing team working on that. So that will hopefully come in 2016. There's a lot of bits and pieces to that one. So other than that, just, get on the podcast. I announce all the things I'm up to on the podcast, and, how you can connect more to me there. So.
Awesome. Well, you all have it. This has been a phenomenal career strategy session, jam-packed on your lunch break. Again, I know a lot of you all are watching. You're sitting at your desk. You're eating food. So make sure you hit Shannah up either by email or on her Twitter and ask her your questions. Again, she answers a lot of questions on her Millennial Money podcast. I am so excited for the upcoming projects that you're working on, and I just can't wait to knocking things around here. Just can't wait to see how excited I've just gotten what those projects are. So again, thank you all for joining us. I want to remind you to eliminate excuses and emulate excellence, and I'll see you on the next career strategy session.